Hey guys, my name is Haley and today I'm going to be filming my most disappointing books of 2020, which I have been putting off filming this because I have not been in a filming mood lately, so we're probably going to do some pre-filming. Also, I am aggressively tie-dye, so ignore that. I just got home from work and I'm not about to change for this video and my hair looks like a mushroom, but we're gonna be filming my most disappointing books of 2020. I might be forgetting some DNFs because I honestly was not really keeping track of DNFs this past year, besides the ones that were like super disappointing. So I don't have that many, but I have a couple that I would like to talk about. The first of those being Soft Apocalypse by Will McIntosh. If you've been around here for the last year or so, probably at least since the summer, I have been reading all of Will McIntosh's books because I read a book of his 2 years ago and really loved it because he's like that speculative sci-fi type of author, and so I binge read all of his books over the summer, and this is the first one I tried to read because it's his first book and it's by far the worst one. The main character in this is just the most obnoxious, annoying human being on the planet. He's like this 20-something, I think, year old guy who is living in a literal apocalypse. Like, the world is ending and he is only concerned about finding a girlfriend. Like, all he wants is like to find a girlfriend. Every girl he meets, he's like, oh, I could date this girl, and I'm like, I can't. Like, I ended up DNFing this back in the summer and then went back and just kind of like read it as fast as humanly possible just to be able to read it because I want to read all of Will McIntosh's books, and it was not a fun time. I gave it 2 stars, so this was definitely the most disappointing of his books for sure. Next up is a kind of random one, and it doesn't really make sense why I find it so disappointing, but that one is an author, and that is Bentley Little. The first of his books I read was The Haunted. I also read The Handyman. We're gonna talk about The Haunted though, because this was one of the books that I picked up during October for spooky reads, just to be able to like find some new authors of like scary books. And the part of this that upset me so much and made it so disappointing is that I actually like his writing style. I like the way he paces his like thrillers and his horrors, and I liked the like even villain situation in The Haunted, but he kept doing, and this is why I DNF'd after reading 2 of his books, he kept doing the whole like making something sexual for no reason, just because I feel like it was because it's a trope in horror and you have to do it because that's like a trope to put on your checklist for horror, and that's exactly what it felt like, and it made me really annoyed. Like, the way he handled it in this one was just, he used a teenage girl and like the ghost was texting her and sending her creepy like sex and stuff, and I was like, why is this isn't adding to the horror, it's just annoying at this point. So that was my reasoning for his, and the same or something very similar happened in The Handyman. So I was just like, I'm sad because I like his writing style, but I don't think that Bentley Little's thrillers and horrors or books are gonna be for me, unfortunately. Next up should not be a surprise, and I wouldn't even say it's just surprising, but it was just a sad situation. And that is Cult X by Fuminori Nakamura. This is a book that me and Kate both picked up in half-price books during the summer. We're like, yeah, we're gonna buddy read this because cults and horror, we both really like horror, terror, and thrillers. So we were gonna buddy read this, and we did. We got maybe 100 pages in and I was like, this isn't my favorite thing. And then once we hit like past 100 pages, even like, I'm someone that gets annoyed when religion is mishandled in books in the sense of like making fun of it or attacking it, specifically Christianity, because I am a Christian. And this one not only went after Christianity eventually, but it also went after like literally every religion you can think of. Like it was this like professor who was like the leader of the cult or whatever, who does these speeches, like basically TED Talks, and every single one of them is him coming after religions, like making fun of them, denouncing them as much as humanly possible, and almost like just straight up attacking it. And I, like, by the 200 page point, I was like, I can't do this. And Kate, who was even like trying to give it more of a chance than I was, she got a little bit further and like did some skim reading. But I have honestly added this to my list of, there are like 2 books that always come to mind of my least favorite books of all time. One of those is Beautiful Disaster by Jamie Maguire. the most annoying reading experience of my life. Not even because it's about an abusive relationship, but because it romanticizes it. I don't talk about that very much on my channel, but I hate that book with a burning passion. And the other one is Akatar. And I hate it for the same reason of just like romanticizing a very toxic relationship. And this one is the first one that I've made like my list of least favorite things I've ever read, not for that reason, because the reason I hated this was that it was, one, attacking something that is obviously very important to me, and also attacking other religions that are gonna be very important to other people reading this, but also because I know it's a thing in cults that they use sex as like a way of forcing submission. Like that's just common practice, which is why I generally don't like culty things. But it was so overdone in this to the point where like I was skipping them every time something came up because nothing important, like Kate would read over them and be like, nope, nothing important's happening, nothing happened there either, and it would just be pages and pages and pages of just like submissive, overbearing, gross like sexual content. And I was like, I'm not about that life. This is one of those that I'm like, if you are of any religion, have any form of faith, or even if you like horror, nothing about this was horror. It was just a bunch of creepy sex scenes and just philosophy attacking every religion on the planet, and it was just so condescending is the best word for this book. So I hated it and gave it 1 star, and it's like one of the most aggressive 1 stars I've given in a long time. Next up is one that I have wanted to read since it came out, and that is Kill Creek by Scott Thomas. The unfortunate part of this is I own another one of Scott Thomas's books. Thankfully I did not own this one, but I remember this coming out. It's like a haunted house story of like a bunch of writers that go to a haunted house and have to spend the night, and like it's supposed to be a, not cash grab, but like a exposure opportunity for each of these authors. And like I liked the first half of the book a lot, which is probably why I was so disappointed when we hit a certain point. And there is a character who is the female character of the authors who is really aggressive, and I didn't like her. And I was like, I just kind of looked past it in the beginning of the book and was like, okay, I'm bound to not like one of these several authors. Once we left the haunted house, there was still a bunch of the book left, and as it progressed through the second half of the book, I progressively got angrier and angrier because not only was there more of the female character that I didn't like, but also there is a Christian horror author in this group of people, and he kind of gets attacked. Like almost it felt like he was being attacked by the author and like turned into this complete opposite of who he was in the first half of the book, and it came out of nowhere. So that irked me. And then his character was just like kicked and attacked and like beaten while he was down for the rest of the book. And also the second half of the book, like that aside, the second half of the book was not nearly as interesting as the first half. It like turned into some just like generic slasher, which I was not about. So this was incredibly disappointing to me. Like it went from a solid 4 star to like a 2 star because it annoyed me so much and like just got really boring and repetitive towards the end. Next up is probably, I would argue, one of my most disappointing, and it's just because I love this author's other series so much, and that is unfortunately The Priority of the Orange Tree. I've wanted to read this since it came out, even before I got into Samantha Shannon's other series, which is one of my favorite series of all time. And I was like, at first, after I finished this, I was like, okay, maybe it's just because I'm not in a fantasy mood, because I did not read very much fantasy last year at all, so I'm just like, okay, maybe it's just because I'm not into fantasy, this was a bad time for me to read it, whatever. But the more I've sat on it and thought on it, I just think it was all over the place, and that the characters were like somewhat fleshed out, but also the world, I could not tell you what this world is, or like how the magic works, how the dragons work, how anything works. All I remember is the relationship, which I feel like in an 800-page fantasy novel, that's probably not what you were going for. So, and like in her other series, I know it's not because she can't world build, because her other world is very, very thought out and well fleshed out, and this one just is not, which really upset me. And I really wanted to love this. I've been looking forward to reading it forever, and it's a beautiful book. But I know she's writing like a companion, or at the very least something in this world to go along with it, and I'm not sure that I'm gonna read it, which upsets me. So This is probably like tied with my other one for my most disappointing books of the year, and I'm so sad about it. And then last, but certainly not least, if you saw, was it my October or November TBR? One of those. It feels like a very long time ago. My most disappointing book of the year, because of how it was pitched to me and because I had heard like booktubers that I really like say this was good, and that is Where Dreams Descend. I remember hearing about this book when it came out, like even before it came out, the hype was real. It has always been pitched as Phantom of the Opera meets Moulin Rouge, which, as I've said every time I've mentioned this book, Moulin Rouge is my favorite movie of all time and has been since I was very young. And Phantom of the Opera is one of my top 5 favorite musicals of all time. So when I heard that pitch, I was like, that has to be too good to be true. Like, it has to be. I don't believe it. And then I saw some people read it and go, yeah, this is pretty good. And I saw a booktuber who I really like also read it and said it was really good. Like, someone who really likes Moulin Rouge and also really likes Phantom. And she was like, okay, this is actually really good. It is actually what it sounds like. Like, the hype is real. And I was like, okay, fine. I will try it. And I got maybe 15-20% into this, if that. And like, I get the comparison, but the comparison is also very wrong. It has a Moulin Rouge feel, like it has the circusy, like can feel. And it also has like very much an homage to Phantom with the handler or whatever he is, the male character in this, and how he learns about the female character. But what I would actually compare this to is The Night Circus, and I did not like The Night Circus, but that's exactly what this felt like. It felt like a relatively cool world with like very bland main characters, and you're supposed to believe the romance, and I was just not having it. I could tell where this book was going, and I think it's considered YA, which was another reason I was like putting it off, because I was like, am I gonna like this? But it was so highly regarded, and it was 2 of my favorite things, and I wanted to try it, and I was just so upset. I'm still upset. Like, I wish I could go back and be like, oh, I'll definitely like finish it sometime just to give it like the full effect, and I'm like, no. I know from the first 20% of this that it's gonna be exactly all of the reasons I didn't like The Night Circus. Like, I liked the world, I loved The Night Circus itself. The main characters and the romance was so unbelievable and not fleshed out that I couldn't even remotely get on board with it. So if you like The Night Circus, you might actually enjoy this. But if you're like me and don't like it for the same reasons, I would not recommend this. I also, please stop calling it Phantom versus meets Moulin Rouge. It upsets me every time I hear it now. But yeah, those are my most disappointing books of 2020 that I can remember. I'm sure there were more, because I've definitely did a lot of DNFs over the year, but those are the ones that I remember the most and have actually stuck with me. So let me know if you've had any super disappointing reads last year. I would be very curious to find out. Thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys next time.